Let me see your identification.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
You must be Igor.
You've got a real attitude problem. Danger's my middle name.
Wait, let me explain something to you.
I am an FBI agent!
I know, man, isn't it wild?
Well, my mistake.
Did you eat a lot of paint chips when you were a kid? Why?
Are you shook up? Are you nervous?
Supernatural, perhaps.
Christ, look at that! God help us!
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
We'd like to get a sample of your brain tissue.
Okay.
Should I give him some medicine?
It's alive!
You know what's going on? Maybe it's another drill.
Welcome to Face the Real podcast that inspires and changes lives. Working as a stuntman and stunt coordinator in the motion picture and television world for over 27 years, I had the pleasure to meet and work with some amazing people. Actors, producers, directors, wardrobe, hair and makeup, fellow stunt performers, you name it. Here you get to hear some unbelievable stories from awesome people and their journeys through their lives, their struggles, and how they got to where they are today. Some of them funny, some of them sad, but never boring, and hopefully will help you to reach your goals, whatever they might be. I am Oliver Keller, and I'm excited to have you with me to face the real
Charlie Croughwell. Today we're going to face the real Charlie Croughwell. Starting as a stuntman at a very early age, you made quite a name for yourself, then worked your way up to become a stunt coordinator, and then one of the top second unit directors in the motion picture industry. Charlie, your resume is endless. So why don't you start with telling us a little bit about some of your favorite movies you worked on?
As far as biggest show is concerned, or my favorite show to have done, or
yeah, some of your favorite shows.
I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite.
Sure.
I think I have a good time on every show I do. It's rare that I don't have a really good time, and every show is different people, different location, different story. Back to the Future was what really propelled me. So that experience early on, I learned so much that you're 20 years old and you think you know everything. And then, at 25, I look back on those experiences, on the whole Back to the Future thing. And I go, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. None whatsoever. I'm lucky I even survived, that period of time. So, as far as the learning experience and enjoying the people that you're working with and learning from the people that you're working with, the Back to the Futures were probably, are right there at the top of the list. There are other great shows I've worked on with great people. Life of Pi was amazing. That was Ang Lee, and it was an amazing experience we had in Taiwan. We were there for a year. Cameron was there with me. We trained the actor. We taught him how to swim. He didn't know how to swim when we got him, and we certified him as a diver. But before the end of the show, so right. We were able to achieve something that the first day I stuck him in the swimming pool, and he asked me, what exactly do you mean by swim? When I told him to swim, I thought, oh, Jesus God Almighty, we're gonna have our hands full here. So Cameron got on a plane, came over, and they became best friends and hung out all the time. And it really turned into a great experience for me as well as for Cam and for the actor and the whole go around. And what I really enjoy about the shows that I've done, especially the big features that you're on for a long period of time, is that the older I get, the more people I know on the show going in the door. But at the same time, you meet a lot of new people, and I have friends all over the world that I stay in touch with on a regular basis. So not daily, but weekly, definitely. That I never would have had. Never would have been my friends had I not gone and done those things. So those are the positives that came out of all these different experiences, all these different shows, that I really am comfortable anywhere in the world. because you're bound to know someone somewhere. You know,
Right.
and that I think is probably one of the greatest parts of the job that we do.
Now, where did you grow up, first of all? On the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut. I was born in California. I was born in Covina, but my father was transferred to New York when I was young. So we grew up in Connecticut. I started doing stunts in New York. Just go over it real quick. I graduated high school. I grew up racing boats with my father.
Oh, wow.
And my brothers. And when I graduated high school, I moved to my brother's, and I basically lived off of him for a year and raced boats with him. And then went back to Connecticut because I was going nowhere. And I went to engineering school, and I just bored the shit out of me. I love engineering, but I hate the whole, the schooling wasn't, that wasn't for me. I couldn't just sit. My dad was an engineer, my brother's an engineer, and I just didn't want to do what they do, you know, the process that they go through in their daily lives. So, but I always wanted to do stunts, and I was always interested in stunts. So I think that was the moment that it all clicked. And I went, you know, if I applied engineering to stunts, you know, I'd probably have a better chance of surviving if I, you know, you really think the thing through before you do it. And then I started pursuing it in New York, and I was there for 4 years doing stunts. And then I came to California to do a job for Suzuki. They had a new bike that they had just released. They were trying to compete with Harley. It was a smaller bike, but it kind of looked like a Harley a little bit, kind of, sort of. And they wanted somebody small to ride it, so it made it look bigger. Okay. And so I came out for 2 weeks, and I did that job. It took me a few days to do the job, but I stayed. And I went to all of the associations, and Jill at the Stuntmen's Association had recommended me for that job. So I went by the Stuntmen's Association to thank her for that. She was the secretary.
How did she know about you?
Well, I had sent her my stuff. So in New York, everybody sent their stuff to California, to all the groups, everybody. You know, your headshot, your resume, everything.
Right, right.
And she kept a file. And they called me, and I asked them when I went to do it, I said, how did you track me down, of all people? And they said, well, Jill at the Stuntmen's Association told us. So I went by the Stuntmen's Association to thank Jill for recommending me for it. And I met a bunch of guys when I was there, and I was an unusual size. There weren't a lot of guys my size around at that time. And, you know, one thing led to another, and all the positive feedback, you know, you get negative feedback also. You get the guys that are going, you're never going to make it, go back, you know, you never do something. And if anything, that just emboldened me more to go after it.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of great feedback from everybody I ran into. So I went home, loaded my car up, and put my bike in the trailer in the back in my toolbox, and out I came. And that was it.
How did you first find out about the job, stuntman?
How did I first find out about doing stunts or stuntmen?
Yeah, being a stuntman.
You know, it's interesting because I grew up in an area where there were a lot of people, movie people, theater people. Paul Newman lived down the road from us. Redford lived in the town. I went to school with Jack Klugman's son, David. Jack Klugman was one of the guys in The Odd Couple, the original Odd Couple TV series.
Yeah, I love the show.
So I knew about it, you know, all through school, through grade school and everything. I interacted with people who were involved in the film industry or involved in the theater industry. My brother, my oldest brother, who I went and lived off of for a year, was a stage manager at the Westport Country Playhouse in Westport, Connecticut. So we always had some kind of involvement in something that had something to do with performing, whether it was, you know, behind the scenes, or my mom wrote plays for us and we would perform them for the family and stuff. So
wow.
we always kind of, you know, just did stuff. And my friends and I would stage crashes with my motorcycles. We had bikes and we had go-karts and all of that. And we would always stage something stupid. And, take photos of it. We didn't have video cameras at the time, but as we got video cameras, the big monsters, then we started videoing them all. So it was just kind of always a thing,
Okay.
It was never like, it wasn't that defined in the beginning. It developed over time. And I think that, living that way, being exposed to a lot of people in the industry, as well as, we were super, super active. The whole family was really active. I had 4 siblings. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And we were my sister was a gymnast, and I used to practice with her, and I'd help her with her routines. And my brother was a sailor. He raced. My younger brother raced boats as well. So we were always doing something. We were always on the water, or in the water, or someplace. So that kind of active lifestyle, which fits with what stunt people are,
Right.
Just seemed to be natural.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I do recall you were telling me a story that you knew some lady in Connecticut, I think, that had an uncle that was a stunt coordinator in Hollywood. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a little more involved than that, but I won't go into too much detail. I had a girlfriend in Connecticut whose best friend's father was a stunt coordinator.
Okay.
And when I moved to California, I left her in Connecticut, and I was on my way, and she said, if you ever run into this guy, let me know. That's my best friend's father. So I said, all right, great. And at that time, when we got here, hustling was what it was all about. You had to hustle. At that time, you could hustle 10, 12 shows a day easily. There was so much going on. And you would go to the studios. You'd sneak on the lot. You'd swipe the call sheets. You'd find out where everybody was. There were no numbers to call or anything. There was no way to, no internet or anything like that. So you just had to track down everybody. You had to hear it through the grapevine. Somebody was at such and so place, so you'd go and see them. Well, one day at Universal, there was one way we would go in, which through what is now a parking garage, but used to be offices. And that's where all the daily call sheets were kept. There's one room. And there was a girl there that used to let us in. We'd call her, let her know that we were coming down. She'd unlock the door. We'd go in, we'd grab all the call sheets, and then out we'd go. Well, this one day I went in, and there was one call sheet, and it was Back to the Future, and this guy's name was on the call sheet. So I went, well, I got to go meet this guy. That's that guy. So that kind of, that's what kicked it all off. When I walked on set, that was Mike's first day also. Mike, they had shot the whole movie with, what was it? I always blank on his name. They shot the entire movie, almost virtually the entire movie, and then reshot it with Michael. So Mike's first day was the day that I walked on set to meet this guy. And as I was walking up, there's different variations on this story. So the first AD, who is a very, very good friend of mine, just wrote a book, and he called me and wanted to know what was my impression of what took place that day. And I said, so you have to understand that's from my perspective. So his was completely different. I mean, it wasn't completely different. The two stories came together eventually, but what he did and his team did to ensure that I stayed in contact with them. So here's the story. I was walking up. I asked the AD if they knew who this guy was. He said, yeah, that's the guy over there. So I was walking up to introduce myself to him, and Michael came off the stage. Michael and I walked up to the guy. Mike asked if I was going to be his stunt double. The guy looked at me, looked at Mike, said, yeah, because we were exactly the same size, same build. We moved in a very similar fashion. And Mike left, and the guy said, you do stunts, right? I said, yeah, I do. So the ADs took all my information, and when they needed me, they made sure that I was the guy coming in, which was great. Yeah, I mean, it was pure luck. It was, I don't know any other way to explain it, because everything lined up that day perfectly.
Yeah.
And it was the day we did the, there's a scene where Michael's in the courthouse square and he's getting pushed backwards by Biff in the car. Mike's on the skateboard and he runs up and over the car and down, lands on the skateboard. So that was the first thing I did.
Okay.
Was that gag.
Very
and
cool.
It just continued from there. Mike and I became good friends, and I did everything he did until he left to go, do Spin City. I did a little bit on Spin City, but I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years, something like that.
Crazy. Hey, for some reason your camera is shaking. Is it on a table?
Yeah, it's me. My foot was on the table. All right, I'll stop. Was it really like totally messing with you, wasn't it? I was trying to add a little bit of energy.
Yeah, you're getting antsy. You need to go back to work.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a crazy story. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely meant to be. And I mean, what a franchise to start in. I mean, that's just unbelievable,
The people involved in the making of those movies, Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale and Spielberg and Canton and the coordinators, there were like 5 coordinators on that show. These guys at that time, they would swap shows out. Everybody thought that was just going to be a kid's summer popcorn movie, teen flick. Really wasn't going to be that big of a deal. And everybody was so busy that there was a group of guys that would pass shows amongst them. So Terry Leonard was there, Dick Butler was there, Lauren James was there, Walter Scott was there, Max Clevin was there. There was a whole slew of guys that would go in and cover that show on any given day. So you never knew who you were going to be working with. You just kind of show up and all of a sudden there you are working with Dick Butler, or, Lauren or whoever it was. So that was a great experience because I got to meet multiple coordinators and work for them all on my very first thing in California. You talk about lucky. I got so damn lucky. It was like I hit the jackpot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you know who Mike was when you walked next to him towards Max?
I had no idea who he was. None whatsoever. And I still didn't know who he was after he walked away. Even after I asked somebody, who is that guy? He was on, what was that show he did? I don't even remember. Somebody said, oh, he's on such and so show. And I had never seen it. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's some sitcom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then he did Teen Wolf during the same time, talking about a hard worker. I mean, he was doing day and night.
Oh,
yeah.
When we did Back to the Future 2, he was doing, it was the show where he, I don't remember the name of the show. It was the one he did at Paramount. And they agreed to let him work. He was working he was working the show at Paramount during the day. Not Family Ties. Was it Family Ties?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's what it was. I think he was working that during the day and then working with us at night, or they would adjust the schedule depending upon, what he needed to do. And he was sleeping in the back of the station wagon that they were driving him back and forth from one studio to the next. They put a mattress in the back of the station wagon. He'd climb in, go to sleep. They'd drive him there. He'd get out, go through makeup, hair, and wardrobe, and blah, 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 and get on set and knock it out of the park,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Can't even imagine. And then Back to the Future 2 and 3, you guys shot back to back, right?
Yeah, 2 we shot at primarily at Universal Studios. That was all the hoverboard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3, we had a little bit of prep time between 2 and 3, but then we went right up to Sonora and started shooting that.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
That was a long shoot, right?
It was about a year.
Unreal.
Yeah. At least between the 2 of them, it could have even been a little longer than a year. You know, I was like in heaven at the time. You know, it could have lasted 10 years for all I know. You know, it was a great time. You know, it was the hoverboarding. That was a really, really good time. I own the hoverboard. I kept the hoverboard. I actually I have the only hoverboard that survived, except for one styrofoam one that survived, supposedly.
Okay.
But the one that Mike and I flew every day, that's hanging in my office.
Wow. Yeah, you were telling me that they threw them all away, right? They had a bunch of them.
Yeah. We were flying on piano wire at the time, and piano wire is just single strand, breaks really easily. If it gets a nick in it, you know, it can go south on you really fast. And they were flinging me all over the place. And I had wire snap on me a couple times. And I thought, I'm just going to bring this home with me every night. And I know where it's been. I've had it locked up. Nobody's tossed it in the effects truck or, you know, nicked the wire or anything. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
So I kept it with me. And on the last day of 2, when we were going to, you know, shut down and prep for a little bit, I was leaving and they were just throwing them all away in the garbage can. And I said, I'm going to keep mine. You know, I did all the flying on it. Is it okay if I keep it? And they went, oh yeah, keep it. You know, they didn't care at the time. Nobody understood. There was no, I think Back to the Future 2 was really when the big product placement stuff came into play, Pepsi and all of that. And they didn't even think twice about the hoverboard.
Yeah. And back in the day, they were probably way more laid back with, you know, taking something home or, I remember on Star Trek, on a TV show, actually they let us wear our makeup home. You know?
Really? Wow.
You know, that really looks really cool. I'd like to show that to my girlfriend. It's like, yeah, take it home. You know?
You'd never do that today.
No, never.
Years, no.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you were saying, you know, since Back to the Future was one of your, or the first project, and you were pretty young and pretty green.
First project in California. I had done things in New York before that, but yeah.
Okay, right, California. But you were learning on the go too, right? Was there some specific challenges that came up that you were unfamiliar with?
Well, I'd never been hoverboarding before. I skated a lot. You know, we grew up skating all around town.
Yeah, right.
But no, you know, I mean, you just kind of, it's interesting because I've never been, I was never unsure that I would be able to do something. You know, if I said I can do it, I'll do it.
Right.
You know, I'll get it done.
Yeah.
That nothing was, I mean, it's all a challenge. Flying a hoverboard is a challenge. How do you fly a hoverboard and make it look like you're flying a hoverboard when you're actually hanging from wires?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the challenging part of it, is how do we sell the concept? And, you know, that's always what I always tried to focus on was, am I telling the story the right way? Am I doing what Michael would do? Am I thinking the way Michael would think? Or am I at least understanding what Michael would be going through at this time? And how does that affect my performance and my, you know, the way I move? Because I have to do it like him. I'm him, I'm not me. So that's probably the most challenging part of the whole thing, is to get it right. 100% right, you know, as close as you can possibly get.
Yeah. Now, how were you guys picked when you were flying the hoverboard?
What do you mean? How were we picked?
What was your pick point?
Pick point. Yeah. You know, like how were you chosen? Well,
sorry, I should have said it differently.
Yeah. It depended on what we were doing. Oftentimes we just flew the board itself, and I would ride the flying board. So the board itself would be suspended from the wires. The wires would go through the board, and there was a back wire. Where we placed the back wire, I was able to wrap my right leg around it. Mike is regular footed. I'm goofy footed.
Okay.
So I had to fly with my left foot forward on everything. But I was able to wrap my right leg around the wire and push down on the back of the board. So I could actually get it to float on just that one wire, and the other one would go slack if I wanted to make a turn or something like that. So I could manipulate the board better that way, and I would stay on the board by wrapping my leg around the wire. That was the only way I stayed on.
Mm-hmm.
When we put Mike on there, we put a belt on him, and he had shackles, so he was shackled to the wire itself. So let's just say both his feet slipped off the board, he'd end up straddling the board, but he wouldn't have come off of it.
Right.
And then oftentimes I was picked from the hips. Now, when that came about, they the last time anybody had really done any substantial flying apparently was on The Wizard of Oz for Disney. Michael Lanterri was a special effects guy on Back to the Future, and he said, I don't know who has flying harnesses. The only flying harnesses I know are the ones that were used for the monkeys on The Wizard of Oz over at Disney. So he and I went over to Disney. We climbed up into all these different storage attics, and we managed to find the harnesses that they were using on The Wizard of Oz.
Holy crap.
And, I know. And so we dug them out. We brought them back, and they were just a pair of shorts. It was a pair of jean shorts with the steel plate attached to the side, to the hip. That was it. And there were 4 pick points on the plate. You could adjust up or down so that you balance yourself. But it was a pair of jeans, and crotch, and I mean, they were literally just cut off at the knees. That was it. And you would lose the circulation in your legs in literally 10 seconds. Once you were hanging, you couldn't hang there for very long.
Yeah.
Your legs would go numb and fall asleep. So we started looking at different designs, trying to figure out how we're going to perfect this design, get rid of the crotch, because that's the worst part of the whole thing, and keep it from cutting off the circulation in my legs. So then there was a guy, R.L. Tolbert, who was a friend of Walter Scott's, who would build saddles and things and harnesses for horses and such. So he sewed up a harness. That one wasn't leather. It was out of, it was like a naugahyde or some damn material. It was like sailcloth or something. It was stiff though, really, really stiff, and it had leather straps on the legs. It was like this torture harness, and I could fly in that a lot longer. The straps eventually would cut into your legs and stuff. So we were constantly adjusting the design, but it was crotchless. So that I was in, it was much, much better than the pair of the jean shorts. And I have that harness still. I have that. We built 2 separate harnesses, that one, and then we built another one that was more padded for Mike. So it was just a little more comfortable. And I have both of them still.
And now that was in the mid 80s?
That was 80, let's see. Josh was born 89. So 2 was 88, and then 3 was 89. My son was born when we were in Sonora, my oldest son, Josh, in 1989 when we were on set. Matter of fact, they forced me to go home and be there for the birth. I have a picture of the production manager, Joan Bradshaw, with me up against the wall with her finger in my chest, and she's telling me, "You go home now." And fortunately, I didn't have anything to do for that period of time that I did go home and Josh was born. I went back, and 2 weeks later, he and Michelle came up. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was all good.
Well, the reason why I was asking when that was, because now we have very sophisticated flying harnesses and, all kind of different rigs. And to think that's quite late, right? Like 89, you would have assumed that there was more options than some flying monkey jeans shorts somewhere. It makes sense though that then AmSpec started to make a huge business out of it, right? Which
Right.
they were kind of the peers in harness building at the time, I assume, correct?
Right. Actually, they came around when we were doing the show. I distinctly remember them actively pursuing the stunt industry for jerk vests, for drag vests, for all kinds of things, flying harnesses at that time. So they were really the guys that were leading the charge into the harness manufacturing end of our business, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right at that time, right? Probably right after we did Back to the Future, because I never got a really comfortable harness when we were doing Back to the Future. So I would imagine it was after that. But I did talk to them quite a bit, and we came up with all kinds of different ideas for them. Brian Smurs was a big part of that. Merritt Yonka, Greg Smurs, Scott Sproul, all this whole group that we were all kind of friends. Brian and his brother Brett and I were friends in New York. We actually did stunts there together.
Oh, okay.
And we all came out here at the same time, and we all ended up going down the same road.
Very cool. And you mentioned piano wire. I assume that was because there wasn't technology yet to remove wires, right? And piano wire is really thin, and when it flies around, especially against the sky, you can probably hide it pretty well.
Well, you would paint it. You would blue it, actually, if you wanted a dark or black color. So it wasn't silver, you didn't get any glint off of it. But a lot of the buildings, a lot of the sets were built with that in mind, that we had the mask hide the wires within the, the lines of the building or the background or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Z was a master at that, being able to, it was interesting because another thing that we did in order to make the hoverboard just hover, there was a scene where Mike takes a hoverboard away from a kid, snaps the handle off, throws it down on the ground, and it's hovering, and he runs and jumps on it and flies away.
Yeah.
Well, that hoverboard was sitting on wires, and you're looking right at it. You're looking right at the board, and all they did was vibrate the wires, and the wires disappeared on camera.
Right, because you guys shoot film too, so it's different than if you would shoot it on digital, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they were masters. They employed the old techniques of making movies without CG, yet Bob was instrumental in, testing the limits of CG as well and trying to see how far he could push it all. So it was really a great combination between the two. He even told me at one time, he goes, your career is going to be short-lived because eventually we're going to get rid of you guys and you're all going to be CG characters. And I said, no, you'll never get rid of Stuntman Bob, no matter what. You may make the group smaller, but there will always have to be stunt guys because I don't believe you can make a CG person, look like a real person. We pick up on that. But because he was in both worlds, it was really a great experience. Really, really great learning experience.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Man, I remember that shot, like the hoverboard just floating there, and then feet get on it and it takes off. And I always wondered how they did that because it looks real. I mean, it looks like that thing should be floating.
Well, it was floating on the wires, but at the same time, Mike Lanteri came up with how are you gonna touch your feet on this thing and take off? Because I was hanging on a bar and they rolled me in on this bar.
Okay.
And I just dropped my feet onto it and they rolled me out of the shot. And he said, we have to somehow attach your feet to this board without it looking like your feet are attached to the board. And we tested Velcro. That didn't really, it was hard to get because I couldn't put any pressure down on it.
Mm.
So we were actually talking about really being able to build a hoverboard similar to a maglev train, exactly like a maglev train. I thought, wonder if there's any way, and we were playing with ideas with rare earth magnets, trying to figure out how can we get this thing to hover without falling off the side of the magnetic field. And the rare earth magnets are incredibly strong. So they embedded some in the bottom of a board and they put some in the sole of my shoes. And as I came in, it went boom, and it was attached to my foot and away I went. And it was harder getting the board off my foot than it was getting it on my foot. But I could pick it up and fly away with it like, like we really did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember them as all three of them very well, but the first one was probably my favorite. It's hard to pick a favorite because they were all great. But and I was probably like 11 or 12 years old, watching you standing in front of this giant speaker with the guitar, and just those shots, jumping on the skateboard. I mean, it was one of the reasons I started skateboarding, right? Because as a kid, that kind of stuff gets you inspired, and but I always wondered how they did that shot in front of that speaker. And then later on, becoming a stunt man, I was like, oh, that's probably a ratchet. And then later you told me it was an ARAM.
Yeah. Yeah. So what it wasn't a ratchet. It was an ARAM. It was one of Phil Chong's old ARAMs, the old leg breakers. He and Kenny and Doso were partners on with ARAMs and ratchets and all kinds of things. And they're they weren't progressive, the ARAMs at that time. So if you weren't in the right position when that thing fired, you weren't going where you were hoping to go.
Well,
so,
explain to the audience that doesn't know stunt equipment, what is an ARAM?
Okay, so an ARAM is a platform that is powered by air. And what happens is there's either a trigger in that is triggered by you stepping on it, or there's a guy standing there, usually at that time it was a special effects guy, that when you're in the right position, he pushes the button, and it's just a hinged door basically. And where you're standing on that platform, which is out at the end, that thing opens up incredibly fast. It's not progressive like they are now. They kind of ramp up. It was closed or it was wide open, and there was no real in between. You didn't have time to even think about anything in between there. So the shot was the speaker, me in front of it. I strum the guitar, and just as that thing is going, and because it's booming, the speaker is supposed to be going boom, 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 and I'm leaning back, and at a certain point, at a very specific point in my lean, the special effects guy, who was also firing the speaker, all of the dead cord in the speaker, he was going to fire me at the same time, or a millisecond later. And I had to be right in the right spot. I had to be leaning or falling backwards. If he didn't fire it on time, I was going across the floor and out the side wall. If he fired it too early, I was going into the rafters in the garage set. Everybody thinks it was a ratchet because the guitar, we had an amp cord on it, and the table. So there was an amp cord on the guitar, and then the table that was behind me to my right hand side. So when I went, the special effects guys had a device. It's probably air, and it could have even been guys on a line. They pulled everything off that table. So they had a line that actually pulled all that stuff off of that table. And I think that's why, because that question has come up 1,000 times. People thought I was on a ratchet, and they'd heard that I was on an ARAM. And I have to go across the room and land in a chair, like a catcher's mitt.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was an ARAM. It wasn't a ratchet. And fortunately, that special effects guy pushed the button at the right time and launched me into the right place in that chair.
One take?
It was one take.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I know in the second one there was a little accident, right, with some flying.
Right, with Cheryl Wheeler.
Okay.
So I wasn't flying on that scene. That was Biff and Biff's buttheads chasing Mike, and Mike flies out over the pond in the town square, and hoverboards don't work on water supposedly. So these guys are all on a rig on their own. I was standing out in the middle of the lake, standing on a board that was mounted to a post that was wobbly. So I was, Mike out there as these guys are supposed to fly over the top of me. I I jumped off of the board into the water, and they fly over the top of me and into the front of the courthouse. Well, there were some issues with that rig that they were on that twisted. The rig itself, the arbor, twisted, so that the guys, I want to say there were, I think it was Cheryl, Gary Morgan, and Richie Guyona, I believe.
And David Rowden.
And then David Rowden was on the bottom. He was doubling Biff. So there were 3 and then 1 guy in the center. And this is my impression. I mean, this is what I feel took place, is that arbor twisted so that these 2 guys actually went through the windows. David went through the door, but Cheryl was still outside. The effects guys, or the guys that were blowing the glass in the courthouse, were inside. And when everybody started to come through the windows, that's when they popped the glass. But what I think they did, what made it confusing for them, is they were looking up at 3 massive panes of glass, and they just saw bodies and glass coming, and they popped the switch. And that's when she was already off. So had they not popped it, she still would have hit that column, I think.
Okay.
But by cutting, they had wire cutters on all their wires, so they would cut them loose when they came in, so they didn't go swinging back out.
Right.
So they all fell in the interior of that courthouse was all pads. The entire floor was removed, and the whole thing was filled up with pads. So they had a nice, good, soft landing to land on. Problem is, she landed on the steps outside. So that was the accident. It was a bad day.
Was it a severe injury?
She broke her jaw. She broke her jaw. I don't recall what other injuries. I'm sure. I know she did. She whacked the thing. I think she broke her hip as well. So she hit the column with her hip. I think when she hit the stair, the landing, I think that's when she got her jaw. And she was an amazing stunt woman. And that's part of the problem with our business, is that things like that can go south really fast. And not that anybody ever wants anything like that to take place. But I think what's really important, and this is an important lesson, I think, for all stunt people, anybody that is currently doing stunts or thinking about getting in the stunt business or pursuing it, that it's their responsibility at the end of the day to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And if there is a reason, that if there's something wrong, they have to address it. It's not, you can't, it was interesting but when I started, I was really into rigging and sailing and all of that. So I understood all of that, anything that I was involved in. But you come across people all the time, you did at that time, and you still do to a certain extent, people that don't understand, how to rig. They don't understand, they don't know, by walking into a stage and looking at a rig, is that safe or is that unsafe? And I think that it's important that you have a full understanding, or as great an understanding of the mechanics, the mechanical aspects of that particular item, so that you understand how it's supposed to operate. And through the testing portion of that, which everybody should test those rigs, to the nth degree, you watch it, you're part of it, you're engaged in the process. You're going to be hanging on, you're not just a piece of meat hanging on the end of a wire. You're the person that's performing that stunt. And you should be able to perform that stunt without worrying about, did I check that shackle? Or was that or what? Does that guy really, did he do that right? You know what I mean? You should never have that question in your mind. You should always, check, double check, triple check, whatever the hell it takes. Make sure that it's right before you get in there to do it. And if it's not, it's easy to adjust. I know some coordinators are going to go, who the hell do you think you are, questioning my experience, which I think is foolish on their part, because they're eliminating or they're cutting out another voice, another set of eyes that may see something that you didn't see. Just because you're a stunt coordinator doesn't mean you know everything. And the guys who are arrogant enough to think that they do, I think they're assholes, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
This is not an industry. This is you know, I got into this line of work. I love just the just doing stuff like this, you know. And I mean, I that was my entire life at the time, you know, when I was getting into it. And it still is 40 years later. I've been doing it 40 years now. And it was then. I'm as excited today as I was then. I enjoy my job today as much, if not more, than I did then. And I think that I think it's important for you to be smart about how you go about doing this job, because nobody wants to get hurt, nobody wants to get killed, and there's no reason for it. You are going to get hurt. We know that's going to happen. When I got into the business, when I decided that this is what I'm going to do, one of the first questions was, well, you could get hurt, you could get killed. I said, then that's my responsibility. I have to make sure I don't get hurt and I don't get killed. And if I do get hurt, or if I do get killed, I missed something. That was my approach. That's not necessarily everyone's approach. That's my approach, because it's up to me to double check. I don't have to, you know, grandstand and make a show about it or anything else. I just have to be present. I have to be aware of what's going on. I need information. If I wasn't provided information, I'll get information. You know, so I think it's our responsibility to make sure, not only for ourselves, but for everybody else. And as a coordinator, to make sure that everybody is comfortable with what they're doing. Right. You know, you talked about the thing you did over the railing for me on Why Women Kill. And, you know, that was a tough spot for you to come into, because there was somebody else that was set up to do it, and that other person had gotten the rehearsal time on that gag. And something came up and they weren't able to do it. So you came in last minute and no idea, no real time to figure out what you were going to do, how you were going to do it. It was an angled curving rail, which is always awkward. You know, you got one hand low, you got one hand high, you got to get up in the air, you got to get your feet over, and you got to get out to a very specific spot, so you don't overshoot it and land flat on the floor. You actually have something that's going to break your fall a little bit.
And call it, Charlie. Ready, and 3, 2, 1, action.
And it was up to you to, like you said, you visualized the entire thing prior to it. And I think that's super important, because you knew, you know, that's a natural way to go about it, is you see the entire process. Mm-hmm. This is how I'm going to get there, and you know what you're capable of doing. So if you know what you're capable of doing, you know what you're not capable of doing. So you have to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. I think the visualization helped me forever. I mean, I've been doing this now for 27 years, and it's something that I learned to do no matter what it is. If it's a fight scene, obviously, you know, you get the whole routine in, but even car hits and so on, although car hits are only, you know, you can only plan them for the first quarter and then you're up for a ride, but still, at least it's, I don't know, it just helps me, you know, when they call 3, 2, 1 action, I don't have to think anymore. You just do it. But I think the fact that people need to be aware of all the different things that are involved is so important. And that's why I'm so, and I'm a bit of a nagger almost sometimes, because I see a lot of up and comers or young kids coming in and they have no idea who Buster Keaton was or Hal Needham and so on. And don't even sometimes seem interested in those stories, even, because even the story you just told me regarding the harnesses you had to go find, and then the development. I just think this is all fascinating, because for me, this is more than just a job. It's my passion since I'm 7 years old, right? There's nothing else that I love more doing than doing stunts and come up with action sequences and so on. And it's just fascinating. So there's so much to learn about all this. And I remember working on a show a couple of years ago, and there was one lady. I was driving a car. We had a moonroof that was open, and she had to be standing up inside the car, and her upper body was outside the vehicle, and she had to point guns and so on. And, you know, between takes, you see them on their phone. the entire time, right? Just texting or whatever. And it's like, dude, you're going to be in a harness here in a little bit, and we're going to be driving 50 some miles an hour. I'm going to slide the car 270 degrees with you standing outside the car. You should wanting to know what kind of safety device you're going to be in and how this whole thing works and how you set that up. And it's just, like you say, it's so important to know all the things that are involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I recall several times on Back to the Future 2, there were times where, you would walk through everything. You'd talk through everything. The people that were involved in the gag with you, you guys would go over it step by step. There were a couple of gags where I was strapped to the car and I couldn't get away from that car. There was no way. I was hanging out there, and the guy driving that car had to be dead nuts on, because if he wasn't, I was just going to be scraped off the side of that car. And we would go over everything to the nth degree. We would walk it, we would talk it, we would drive it. But what that allowed us to do is that gave us the time to figure out exactly how we were going to do this. Where were the outs if needed? There was one shot when I'm hanging off the side of the car in the tunnel. There's a truck coming the other way. My legs are, I'm flying the hoverboard along on the side of the car. And the perspective from the camera, you can't tell how far I am from that truck. But we were moved over, squeezing that truck at the same time. So basically, I'm flying toward the front of that truck, and I'm hanging on the door on a platform.
Yeah.
And the driver's right there, right next to me. And he's watching where we're going, and I'm watching where we're going. And we both know how fast we're going to be going. And we know we have a general idea going into it. This is how fast we're going to go at it. But we're going to have to adjust in the split second. And he has to be dialed in, and I have to be dialed in, and I have to be talking to him, and he's talking to me. All the while, we're trying to perform as if we were Biff and Mike. And he pulled out, we were going, we're getting closer to that truck, and we were going faster than we were expected. So, you could see, I'm gonna cream the front of this truck if, we don't move over by that moment. So at the same moment I say, move, he was moving. So we were both totally in sync with each other. We were able to swerve to the right. I was able to pull my legs back in and skate by that truck before I got my legs ripped off my body. But it was what was the important part of this is that we worked through it all well in advance. So when it came time to do it, when they went, okay, let's go, get them on the car, let's hurry up, hustle it up, get this done. We had already been through it 500 times in our heads. We had walked it, we had talked it, we had analyzed virtually every aspect of it in an attempt to minimize the risk as much as possible. So we knew exactly what each other one was going to do. And I think that's really important, really, really important. Whether you do it on your time or you do it on the show time, it all depends on how it comes together. I think it's important time. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I don't want to just bash up and coming stunt people here, but I'm just saying, like, go find a good mentor, find someone that has a lot of knowledge and learn from them, right? And do your research.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Listen. It was funny because there was a time I was learning how to rope. I was actually just practicing roping on a dummy steer, not a live one. And there were probably 10 we were at Terry Leonard's place, and there had to be at least 10 guys, 10 coordinators there, So I'm doing what I'm doing, and one guy comes up to me, goes, "Oh, no, you're doing that all wrong. You got to do it this way." So he'd show me how he felt I should do it. So I'd try that. Another guy would come up and go, "He doesn't have any idea what the hell he's talking about. This is the way you do it." And everybody had something to say. And I was getting frustrated because I was trying everyone's, idea. I was trying to combine everyone's idea. And Terry Leonard walked up and he goes, I see that you're a little frustrated right now. I said, yeah, I'm not quite sure, what it is I'm doing wrong anymore, because I've gotten so much input that I'm trying to utilize everybody's input, and it just doesn't work, their method. He said, you know what you got to do is you just got to listen to everything everybody has to say, and then think about what will work for you with your style, and then use that, because that's your style then. That's what's going to work for you. Make sure you listen to everything everybody has to say. Don't act like you know everything, because you don't. Listen to what they have to say, because they do know what they're talking about. They all just have different opinions. They are cowboys. So I think that's one of the most important pieces of advice I've ever received, because I use it as often as I can. And any chance I get to listen to what somebody has to say, it doesn't matter who they are. If they could be anybody. If somebody comes up and goes, hey, you know what? I've changed the way I've done things because people have come up and said, hey, you know what? And I've gone, ooh, I didn't even know that. I didn't even think about that. That was like the furthest thing from my mind. And thank God they did to say something, because that made it work.
Right.
It was that one little thing. And it can be anybody. I mean, anybody. You'd be surprised how many people have great ideas. Stunt people, grips, props, effects. I mean, everybody, everyone.
Yeah, it's definitely important. It's important to be open-minded and not have an ego, and just work as a team and make it happen.
Yeah, and I think the whole mentorship thing, I totally agree with you. The mentoring is, I think, to be a mentor is very important, and to be open to being a mentor for people. But at the same time, to accept a mentor, or that's a tough spot for young stunt people to find. If you think about it, think about how many people have come into this business every year as stunt people, want to get in as stunt people. And there were only so many shows nowadays, especially when I was started, there were shows, like crazy. Everybody was working. All the stunt guys were working. So you could get access to everyone. Nowadays, you don't have that access. And it's going to be more difficult now with COVID, that you won't have the same access that we had. We could walk up, we could introduce ourselves. The guy could see you, you could see the guy. You kind of got a sense of who's who in that zoo. Nowadays, somebody's going to email you, or somebody's going to text you. And from that, I have to gauge who this person is. They have to gauge who I am. They're trying to get time with me. I'm trying to see who they are. From mentors, I'm totally open to people coming to me, and I'll do everything I can to take time just to work with people and help them. But it's going to be tough. It's tough as a young stunt guy to find that place, that spot. I got really lucky. I know, I've seen guys around that have been around for years and years and years that just never quite got that spot for some reason,
Yeah. Which can have all kind of different reasons why, but I think you made a great point here with COVID. You go and meet someone, just walk up to a set and try to go and meet a coordinator. That's probably going to be gone for some time,
Yeah.
And then the other good point you made is with people wearing masks and on set having to wear masks, you don't see those facial expressions, you don't see the personality and so on. So I think that's going to be huge, in general. It's going to be a difficult one to go to work, because mostly the reason why we do hire each other is because, we build a friendship or some sort of a network, and you're going to get an opportunity because, Charlie likes you or whatsoever. And now you can't even give your buddy a hug or hang out together. And so it's going to be a bit different for sure.
Yeah, I think everybody has to change their methods. The coordinators have to change their methods. How are they going to interact with people? The ones that do interact with people. you know, with new guys, new stunt people, not guys, but girls. I mean, all of them, you know, everybody. I think it's important to stress that too. You know, they need the girls need as much support, if not more, than the guys, because it's easier for the guys than it is for the girls. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult for them. Fortunately, I've you know, I when I started, we hustled. I would, in New York, you hustled too. Same thing. I would ride my motorcycle into the city in the pouring rain for an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there, to meet somebody for 5 minutes, turn around, get on my bike, and ride all the way back out again in the pouring rain.
Right.
And that commitment to it, I think, is important. I think, you know, when I started, I did every bit of research I could possibly do. I knew who Yakima Canutt was. I knew all about John Wayne. I knew all about where cowboys, where stuntmen originally came from, how it all began. How fights were actually done before Yakima Canutt and John Wayne. And now you mentioned Yakima Canutt to somebody, to a young stunt guy, and they don't have any idea. You mention guys who were my mentors to people now, and they have no idea who they are.
No.
I bought every book I could ever find, every article I could find on stunt people, on filmmaking, on everything that had to do with this job. And you really get an insight into who these people are and who the people that you're dealing with, or where they came from, where it originated. The stunt industry has evolved in a huge way. We've gone from being rodeo cowboys or rodeo clowns, you know, was a lot of it came from, a lot of stunt people came from, to engineers and designers and scientists, and that's kind of changed the entire industry. But at the same time, you really should go back and learn what the basic physics of a particular thing is. Even though you're doing it in a completely different, you think you're doing it in a completely new, different way. It's really been done already. It's just, you're evolving, you know, the whole thing is evolving with time and with the gags and with the bigger they are and the CG involved. And you know, I actually think CG has helped our you know, our particular line of work, because it's opened up this whole new field of rigging, wire work that didn't exist when we did Batman Returns in 91. That was, nobody was really doing big ratchet gags at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually, I think it was 26 people all at the same time.
In 91.
In 1991.
Right.
Batman Returns. Yeah.
And a few minutes ago, we were talking about harnesses not existing in 89.
Harnesses didn't exist in 89. So now this is the time. Matter of fact, that's right. Because AmSpec, they came and visited me on Batman because we needed harnesses for all of the stunt people that there was a dance floor that was going to explode. Penguin comes up through the dance floor, whole thing blows up, and all these people go flying back in the room. And everybody had to be on a ratchet, and everybody had to be supported buy those rigs on that floor because that floor was a totally breakaway floor. They couldn't actually have any weight on that floor.
Oh, okay.
So this is Brian Smurs and Merritt Yonka at the time. They were working together, partners doing the rigging. And they had to develop all those systems. Brian and Jeff Haberstad and Tom DeWeer and I mean, there was a whole slew of guys, but Lane Levitt, everybody was doing something that helped the whole system evolve.
Yeah.
And everybody collaborated for the most part. But yeah, 89, we didn't have a harness. 91, we were flying 26 people off of a dance floor that they were suspended over when it was blown up. So in 2 years' time, you know.
I wonder what Dar Robinson used as a harness when he did all those descender tests, because I think those were in the early 80s, right?
They were. I think he was doing, it was actually, I would say it was probably 84, 85 that he did the drop off of the, what's the bridge down in San Pedro? The Vincent Thomas Bridge.
Okay.
He did a descender off of that. And that was, I bet that was 85, 86. Although I worked with Dar in New York on Turk 182, Dar and Kenny, Jesus, everybody knows Kenny. What's Kenny's last name?
I was just thinking of Kenny as well and couldn't come up
Kenny
with
Bates.
Bates, right?
Kenny Bates. Kenny Bates. On Turk 182, there were some descenders, and that was in probably 80, I don't know, 81, 82, somewhere in there, off the Brooklyn Bridge. They did some work on there, some descenders off that. So I'll bet he was just using, obviously he probably designed his own harnesses. He had his own stuff. The descender came from the Israeli military. That's what they used for parachute training.
Right. In the 20s, actually, they started using them. I heard that the Germans had them in the early 20s. But
no kidding.
Yeah.
Think about how far back something comes, and everybody's like, "Wow, I came up with this." You didn't come up with anything new. It started back in the 20s. There's a perfect example. They just they helped it evolve. They reconfigured it, which is the way everything works as it is anyway. Everything they take a basic concept and then, hey, you know what we can do with that? We can do this, or we can do that. And everybody improves upon the previous design.
And I think it's so fascinating how to see time evolving and equipment getting better, and like the quick releases as an example, right? That was always something for some reason that was so fascinating to me. And there was so many mechanical quick releases that Sweeney created and others, but then the skydivers came up with the 3-ring release, which is brilliant, right? That thing is amazing. Now, again, there's always, it's not always the right tool for everything, right? So there's specific gear that you use for specific stunts. So I don't know. There's just so many different gadgets and equipment pieces evolving, and like the ratchet. All of a sudden a ratchet is a long air piston, basically, where a steel rod gets pulled in with pneumatic systems that blow air in it really quick. But I remember seeing the first ratchet that had a flexible rod coming out. So basically it was a cable instead of, a steel rod getting pushed in.
Right.
Talking about, and that alone again is a great idea. Because it's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes to keep that, especially when you have 16-foot long ratchets. So when you get into the bigger ones, it's really important to keep that rod straight and it's on wheels or whatever invention that rigger comes up with. It's just fascinating, all this stuff.
It's interesting because when Brian and Merritt and Jeff and Scott and all these guys were really heading into the rigging world, and developing products, developing ratchets, developing the firing boxes, figuring out exactly how to meter the pressure so that you got it absolutely right. So you weren't killing people. You were not jerking them right out of their shoes. And how things progressed. I think back to a show I did in Chicago. I was getting jerked off the back of a motorcycle, and the coordinator told me, go see Phil Chong. He's got a thing called a shotgun ratchet. Grab that, bring that to Chicago with you. I went, all right, I'll go whatever the hell this shotgun ratchet is.
Sounds
safe. Huh?
Sounds safe.
Yeah, really safe. So I got to the airport and I'm checking it in, and the lady goes, what is this thing? And I go, well, it's a shotgun ratchet. Well, that was the last thing I should have said. That was in the early 80s. But they were like, what do you mean a shotgun? I went, no. It's not a shotgun. It's let me show you. Let me explain it to you, And basically, it was a telescopic piece that was the resistance for this telescoping steel. Basically, it was a tube inside a tube inside a tube inside a tube, and each tube was held back with a different weight of bungee.
Okay.
So, and it would just go through. You would just shackle it off. So, not shackle it, but put it through a cleat. So you would pull this thing tight, and they had marks that were written in tape on this thing. Well, if you're 125 pounds and you're going 40 miles an hour and you don't want to get turned upside down, land on your head, then this is about where you should tighten this bungee to.
Okay.
And that's without changing the bungee between, 300-pound guy that went off of it and the 125-pound guy that went off of it. So, but that was the way you got jerked off the back of a motorcycle, to take the curse off of it a little bit.
Sure.
At that time, now it's a hell of a lot easier. But everybody's developed, these dampening systems, the ratchets. There's all kinds of methods for doing things that only that, because people have evolved, they have more of a physics minded. They're engineers. They're designers. They look at these things differently now than they were looked at when I began, and when they were looked at, long when you were a cowboy getting pulled off a horse, you went off that horse.
Yeah.
Terry Leonard took a lot of spills off the backs of horses for real, and there was not, all they did was they went and turned up the ground a little bit, maybe spread a little bit of sand down there, and they were coming off of these horses full on. So we've gone from guys just selling out, breaking bones, everything, to trying to, lessen the impact as much as possible through design features and the evolution of the machinery. Right. And I think that's a super important part. It's kept a lot of people from getting killed.
Oh, absolutely. I remember Glenn Wilder telling me on Hooper, he was flipping a cop car in the big finale scene in the end, and he was going to do a grab strap where he's just sitting on a bench, not even a seat, on a bench, and holding on to a piece of rope, and then just pulling himself over as he hits the ramp. And he said there wasn't even seatbelts in that car. I just took a rope and tied my waist down. Like that's what those guys used to do back in the day. It's just tough, and learn how not to do it too. So they kind of paved the way for us, for sure.
That's how I did my first turnover.
Is that right?
Grab strap, and you had a cup with a under the hood, and there was a line tied to a trailer ball. There was a trailer ball in that cup, and that line went to the coil wire on the car.
Okay.
So, right. So the coil wire, obviously, they don't have all the exact same components in cars nowadays, but at the time, that was how you shut the car off in case of a runaway. So if you rolled that car over, you ended up back on your wheels, but you couldn't stop it. If on its way over, that trailer hitch, that ball, would fall out of that cup, and that would pull the coil wire and cut the motor.
Wow.
And that wasn't that long ago. I mean, that was in early days of my career, but I don't that wasn't that long ago that we were doing it that way.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It is crazy for sure.
It was nuts. Now that you look back at it, I remember hanging out of cars, driving a second car to send it off of a cliff.
Yeah.
So I'm driving that car. You got it. And this is back when you're very in the beginning and you're not, you don't have something that's got a big budget and you don't have real effects guys or
right.
whatever it may have. We want to launch that car off that cliff. All right, we can do that. Let's take the passenger door off that car. Give me a strap to throw around my waist. A rope, anything. I don't care. It's somebody's belt. And you hang on to me, Joe, because I'm going to hang out. I'm driving this car. Don't let go of me now. But that's the way it was done,
Yeah, just have to come up with, have to make it happen. So
you did.
It just made me think of something crazy me and my stepbrother did before I moved to the States. We were in St. Switzerland, and we had to flip this car, and there was no cage in it, and so we made it clear we're not going to be in the car and driving it. So now we had to kind of figure out on the spot. It was one of those last minute things, and of course we were all gung ho. We can make this happen, and we had like a kind of like a pickup truck, European style, not as cool. And so then we had a really big ladder. The thing was, 30 some feet. And it was one of those things, or 20 some feet. One of those ladders you can slide up, right? So you can actually take them apart. So you have two individual pieces. So we rigged on the driver's side, underneath, probably like 4 feet of it, tied it to the vehicle. So now we'll just have a long piece sticking straight out. Then we did the same thing on the roof. Totally sketchy, right? Like, do not do this. This is crazy, right? So we did the same thing in the top, and then kind of rigged them together with ratchet straps, and so now it was kind of solid, right? It was strong enough to hold my stepbrother's weight. Now we rigged him to kind of the end of that ladder. We put a little padding on the front bumper of the truck I'm driving. The car we're going to flip, I'm pushing now with the truck I'm driving, and he's sitting on that rig on the front with his hand inside the vehicle steering. And then we just went for the ramp. And at a certain point, I hit the brakes and he lets it go and then hit the ramp and worked out fine. But man, what a sketchy way to do it.
Imagine doing that nowadays. You'd get run off. They'd run you right out of the business.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything like that. It was crazy. But we used to do that stuff. You're right. That's crazy. That's a good one. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, it worked pretty good.
Yeah, I'll bet it did. If I need a steering wheel in place, just get it hopefully tracking straight to that ramp. And
yeah.
Good luck.
It was tough for him because I had to hit the brakes real heavy, right? And so all this weight is in the front.
Right.
It was so crazy. Yeah, I mean, that kind of reminds me on the first Canon test. You heard that story, right? With Hal Needham?
Yeah.
Dude, unbelievable. I mean, the things those guys did and walked away from it. Did you see the video I posted of the first Canon that was supposed to be Hal doing filming on the beach on McHugh? It was the Whiz Kid driving, McClarty.
Was he? Yeah. No, I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, go look at it. It's pretty crazy. Pretty cool. It's like 55 mile an hour car in the surf. And, he whips the steering wheel, hits the cannon, flips the car like 5 times. And then you see McClarty getting out of the car with jeans and short sleeve button shirt, soft elbows, and an open face helmet. Nothing.
Yeah.
No neck restrained. Of course, no special seats back then.
Yeah. And they've all got messed up backs. They're all 3 inches shorter because of all the jumps they did on Dukes. And I want to say I think I've seen that gag, because as you're explaining it, I recall having seen something. I think we were talking about it about a year or so ago. It came up in conversation at some point in time, and I think I saw it then.
Okay.
I don't think I had seen it before that though.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, they were crazy. I mean, some of the stuff that those guys were doing, as early as the early well, it was the 80s, the early 80s, mid 80s. There was some crazy stuff going on.
Well, even before though, Buster Keaton was doing things, you know, and then also you were earlier mentioning that nowadays, you know, it's not new. As an example, parkour is not new. Jackie Chan has been doing parkour for decades.
Yeah.
He basically invented that stuff. I mean, it was insane, the kind of things, the creativity that that guy had and, you know, brought into the movie industry is tremendous. All the different movements.
Yeah. It's interesting to see where something began and where it is today. And if you talk to the people that are performing it today, do they know where it began? It's interesting to see how many of them do and how many of them don't and haven't taken the time. It was like with Callie the other day when she did the interview with you. You know, it's interesting because she walked away going, there's a lot I don't know yet. And I have all the books. I mean, I have a library full of stunt books. From the very beginning, you know, Yakima Canutt and silent movies, the tricks that they used to use for doing stuff with Charlie Chaplin and the glass paintings that they used to use in lieu of, blue screen.
Right.
I think if you learn that, if you can take the time to look back on all of those things, and it's always more interesting if it relates to what you're interested in, not necessarily some other department in the industry. Although you should be interested in what everybody does because it's all part and parcel with what you do. You know, it's very interesting the progression that's taken place. I found a book in New Zealand. I was doing The Frighteners with Michael. We were there for about a year. And I was in a bookstore one day and I found this old bookstore. I just actually loaned it to the DP on Animal Kingdom the other day. And it tells all about shooting the Alamo and how all the glass paintings that they used to do. The Alamo wasn't what you saw in the film. It was, you know, a quarter of what it was in the film, but they extended it, not with CG, but with glass paintings.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. You know, they were true artisans at that time, and they still are, just in a different fashion. You know, the painters have become, the guys, the visual effects guys.
Yeah, animators.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you're absolutely right. Another department that fascinated me in that aspect is the special effects makeup department too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when you did Planet of the Apes and all the other movies that you worked on, you know, and you listen to their stories, and some of them have been around for decades, right? And they're just so excited about this new product. The silicon gets used much more nowadays, but there's still a place for spirit gum, right? For that very nasty, specific glue. They say there's just no new replacement yet for certain things, or some old things just work great, you know. So
yeah, why change it if it still works really well and there's no alternative that's better?
Yeah.
I worked with Rick Baker quite a bit, and he did all the apes. You know, he was an amazing guy, had an amazing facility. His people were top notch. They did the Grinch with us. We did Planet of the Apes. Men in Black 2. They did all the makeup for that. And what was great about working with Rick was that he would come to me for characters. He'd say, you know, I need somebody. Let's look for this character. So I'd bring in 5 or 6 people that I thought would fit that character. And they were contortionists and circus people. And, you know, there's just a fascinating array of people in the world that really are very incredibly quirky. They have these quirky talents that have worked great for me in this industry because I've been able to bring those people in. There was a guy, we did Big Fish. And there was a guy who was considered a giant in the film, and Tim was looking at just big guys, you know, guys that were 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and and just normal looking guys. And I said, Tim, I've got this guy, Matt McGrory. I've used him in the past. I used him on I think it was Men in Black. I used him on something before I brought him into Big Fish. So Matt is just an incredible human being. He's one of the tallest people in the world. He was all twisted up because, whatever the condition that he had, he had to take the front seats out of his car and drive from his back seat. He was so
No
damn
way.
Yeah, I mean, just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And Tim was flying back to Pennsylvania to look at something. And so I had Matt, he said, have Matt meet me at this place in Pennsylvania. And it just happened to be a place where they were going to be looking at these sheep that Matt had to pick up. And or the giant had to pick up. And they had to appear to be small. Well, next to Matt's hands were like this big. And Tim, as soon as he saw him, Tim went, oh my God, that's the guy. That's the giant for our movie. And he's in it. He's in Big Fish. And the thing about it is that we went outside of the norm. We didn't think inside the box. We looked at, thought outside the box, went, who in the world fits the character that he's describing? Tim Burton, you have to understand his quirkiness anyway, but I think if you see, you have seen one of his movies, you go, okay, I know what you're looking for.
Right.
And it's a fascinating part of our business is that we get to experience so many different kinds of people.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was answering a question or not, to be honest.
No, and we don't always have to answer questions. We can just talk. And you just made me think of something else that I'd like to share on the movie Deliverance.
I didn't do Deliverance.
No, I know you didn't. But okay. Burt Reynolds was a friend of mine for the last 7 years of his life. And he shared a cool story where towards the end of the movie, they needed one of those crazy hillbillies, the guy that was in the rape scene that was standing there with the shotgun. They just needed a certain character, and I forgot the name of the director now, but Bird said, oh, I know a guy. And he, back then, no cell phones, nothing, right? No emails, but he made a call and that guy showed up, and he showed up in nothing but an overall. He got out of his old beat up truck. He has like 4 teeth in his mouth. and he got out of his truck, and the director just looked at him and was like, that guy's perfect, right? And Bird told me the guy was a buddy of his for years, but he couldn't even read. So Bird had to actually rehearse the lines with him and so on because he couldn't read. So, but it's interesting how, sometimes you just think of someone, it's like he is right or she is right for that part.
It's funny, on Big Fish, we had a scene where Ewan McGregor enters this town, and it's like the old Alabama. It's just a. I don't want to be derogatory in any way. You go into like a Deliverance, and it's an old Southern town, and they're all a bunch of rednecks and everything. And not that all Southern towns are rednecks. I don't mean that. But, so don't get offended. But Tim said, I want the banjo player from Deliverance in this scene. I want him to be sitting on the porch playing the banjo, just like he did in Deliverance. So they found the guy.
No way.
Yeah, way. And they brought him there. He's there. We're sitting there talking to him. We go, can you play, play the same thing you played in Deliverance? He goes, I have no idea how to play the banjo.
Oh, no. He didn't play the banjo.
For playing the banjo. Yeah, but you don't know how to play the banjo. Just never did. Never bothered to learn either.
What was that guy like?
He was interesting. He was definitely from that area. We were in Alabama at the time. And once again, I don't want to label that everybody that's in that area happens to be, but that's that. He was a real simple guy. Never, Deliverance didn't really mean anything to him, didn't have a great effect on his life. He continued to live his life the way he did before it. When he came to Big Fish, it was the same thing. He was just a guy showing up and sitting on a porch with a banjo in his hand. And when the day was over, he went back home and continued life the way it was going before he went to work on Big Fish.
Right.
You know, they're just normal people living their normal lives.
Sure.
So,
how did you get into second unit directing?
Bob Gale, actually, the writer of Back to the Future, gave me my first opportunity to direct second unit for him on a film that he was doing on a spec thing. And then it's just, you know, where it fits. If it's needed, you know, I don't go after it. If they need, you know, if it works within the, you know, whatever the confines of that particular movie. There's so many people involved in every decision in the movie making process nowadays. The director may have his best friend, or the producer may want to direct second unit, or whomever. So I don't go into it with that. I understand the story. If the director and I click and I understand what he feels like I understand the story he's trying to tell, you know, usually end up doing that second unit. Going up shooting it. We did What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and there was a scene that took place in heaven. Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robin Williams are standing on top of a mountain, and Cuba talks Robin into jumping off of the mountain, and Robin discovers that he doesn't die. He lands in a field of flowers. He gets up and he runs like. We went and scouted the location in Montana. We shot most of it in Montana. And we scouted this location, which was the top of a hill. And you look down this hill and there was a garbage dump down at the bottom. And I was standing there with the director and with one of the producers. And I said, you know, in order for us to be able to kind of do this here, we're going to need a massive crane to get up on this hill, or one down below that will reach all the way up here, so that we can do a descender off of this thing. But at the same time, in my opinion, I don't think this is the right location to do it, because it's a hill. It's not a mountaintop in heaven. And a friend of mine, Jake Lombard, who you know, Jake was my rigger for 20 some odd years. Jake had jumped off Angel Falls in Venezuela, done a base jump off of that.
Yeah.
And I remember having seen that. And I called, I was in Montana. I'm renting a cabin in the woods, hoping a grizzly bear doesn't bash down my door. And I've got VHS tapes of Jake jumping off of Angel Falls in Venezuela that I'm cutting together onto another VHS tape, so that I can do a presentation to the studio of what it would look like for Robin Williams to jump off the top of this mountain. But at the time, we didn't even have an editing program. Macs actually didn't have an editing, and there were none. You had PCs, that was it. And there were programs, editing programs for PCs. Are we running out of time?
No.
Okay. There were editing programs, but they were crap. You couldn't actually do anything before iMovie. iMovie was really the one that got everything, as far as being able to shoot tests and cut it all together on your computer. Anyway, I'm sitting there in Montana pushing through VCRs, cutting this tape together. And when I showed it to the studio, it was horrible. I played the video, the tape, the VHS, but there was no sound on it because I couldn't record sound to the tape at the time. So we had to have a boombox there playing a song that Vincent Ward felt was appropriate for that scene while they were watching this video. So they all sat there and they watched this thing. And I said, now I can go to Venezuela and I can shoot all this. It wouldn't be that big a deal. And the show wrapped. And about a month and a half went by, and the producer called me up and he goes, all right, get ready, get your team together. You guys are going to Venezuela. So I went, all right, great. So we took a team. We had about 12 people. We all flew down into Caracas. From Caracas, we flew to a town called Canaima. And then we went to a town called Yucaima. And then we ended up at Jungle Rudy's camp, which was on the edge of the jungle where all the tepuis were, where Angel Falls is. Helicopter came in, we loaded everything in the helicopter, and we flew out to the jungle. But prior to that, we had sent a crew of the Indians, the indigenous Indians there. They took a canoe up river, and they cleared out a landing spot for our helicopter on the other side of the river, directly across from Angel Falls, in the jungle.
Wow.
So we flew out there, landed there. We camped out there for a week. Every morning we would wake up, get in the helicopter, fly up to the top of the tepui. And I had 2 doubles and two aerial cameramen jumping off of Angel Falls, one right after the other. And then we hung our cameras off the side of the mountain so we could get shots, off to the side as he's falling away. And the worst part of that whole thing was waiting for the guys on the radio down at the bottom of the falls to tell us that they had a clean opening on the shoot.
Stretched to the point of no turning back. Flight of fancy on a windswept field. Standing alone, my senses real. Fatal attraction is holding me fast. How can I escape its irresistible grasp? Can't keep my eyes from the circling sky. Tongue-tied, twisted, just an earthbound distant
But we couldn't see the guys. Once they went by this pinnacle, it was Jake Lombard and Jake Brake doubling Robin for me. Once they went by these pinnacles, we couldn't see them any longer. And there was still a good 1,000 feet before the floor. So there was a very tense moment. Once they disappeared, we'd be going,
Yeah.
are you going to tell us that everything's okay or what? What's going on? I don't know why I got onto that line. Why
Totally
did I
fine.
get
It's a
into
great
that
story, but that was in the late 90s, right?
That was I have to remember everything off my kids' ages. So Josh and Cameron both worked on that.
Okay.
Yeah, they were probably Cam was born 91, so it was probably 95, 96, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so the base rigs, they were modified skydive rigs back then too. So again, like equipment was not as sophisticated as it is nowadays. There's there was a handful of base jumpers back in the day.
Yeah.
And Jake
Lombard did Octopussy was the movie. He was James Bond on the outside of the plane on Octopussy.
Yeah.
I mean, way back when, that was one of the very first things I think it was the first thing that he did in the industry. Yeah.
I think he and PJ Worth used to roam together quite a bit, right?
Yeah, they were heliski guides also up in BC. Jake was a long line guy on power line repairs. He's done. Jake's been everywhere in the world. I said to Jake, I called Jake. I said, all right, Jake, studio called. They said, you're going to Venezuela. I need to put a team together. Let's go. And he goes, all right, let me call Carlos first. I went, I don't know if I want to even know who Carlos is. Just go ahead. And no, I'm sorry, it was Pedro. I'm thinking of another guy. Pedro, he said, let me call Pedro first. So Pedro was involved in the security area of the Venezuelan government. So when we arrived in Caracas, we were escorted off the plane and right to our cars. And then when we left Caracas, the same thing happened. We went right from our car right to our plane. So there was no in between anything. So so anytime I say, Jake, I'm going to go to Bangalore, India, Jake. He goes, oh, you know what you got to do? You got to stop. There's a little cafe. And he goes through this whole thing. And I'm like, he knows these people personally. How he knows all these people so well, I don't even want to know. But but that's how we got into Venezuela.
Wow.
I had a pile of money with me, pile of cash, just in case we had the problem. We had to buy our way out. We were prepared to buy our way out. Never had an issue.
Did you already have your place in Belize? So you were pretty knowledgeable about bribes?
No, I didn't have the place in Belize, but I knew all about it once I went there. No, I went to Belize in, that was, I think, when we did the Hulk. Everything is kind of timed off of movies, you know. I'd have to look back and see when we did that.
Yeah.
It was quite a while ago, but no, Belize was after Venezuela.
Yeah. Hey, tell us about your new company. I think it's a great idea what you're doing. Great thing you're doing with the recycling company.
Well, what it is it's not really a recycling company. Everybody wants it to be a recycling company, but I don't want it to be a recycling company. What it is it's a concept. What drives me crazy is that people there's all this hype around. This company makes these shirts that are made with plastic bottles, right? Not this one in particular, but other shirts. So I started looking into that. I said, how many bottles do they use to make that shirt? And it's one water bottle, just one bottle.
No way.
And I thought, there's an awful lot of bottles in the world. It's going to take a hell of a lot of shirts to get rid of all the bottles to reuse that material. And the reason they were using the water bottle, PET, is because it's clean plastic. It can be recycled again and again and again. It can be melted down. It can be shredded, melted down, pelletized, extruded into thread, and then that's woven into, into textiles. That and HDPE. HDPE is what milk jugs are made out of, and furniture is made out of it, so on and so forth. And I wondered, I was in Belize, actually. I was sitting on my boat. My fender on my boat was flat because it was full of air, but it got a slice in the fender. I tried to epoxy it. That didn't work. I thought, what the hell can I fill this thing with that's never going to run out of air? It's never going to be an issue. I don't have to worry about a slice in the thing or anything because I'll contain this material within there. And there's a lot of plastic on the beaches in Belize. There are always people working to try to deal with it, but the method isn't sustainable. It's like beach cleanups. They're not sustainable. So I thought, why can't I use that material? I don't see any reason why I couldn't use all that crap. If I shredded all that up and I stuffed it in this fender, that would keep it from bashing my boat to pieces up against the dock, so it would provide cushioning for it. So that's where the original idea came from. I brought that fender home. I drilled a hole in the top of it. I filled it with plastic, and it was a big fender. It's probably a 24-inch fender. It's about 10 inches in diameter. It was heavy as hell. So I said, there's no way I can hang this off the side of my boat. But I didn't realize that it was so heavy. And it was all mixed plastics. It wasn't water bottle plastic. It wasn't milk jug plastic. It was toothbrushes and hairbrushes and every kind of every plastic that you can imagine, which they say cannot be commingled. You can't blend plastics because they all have different chemical compositions. They all melt at different temperatures. So they said you can't mix plastics. So I actually took that plastic and I tried to mix it, and I took my toaster oven out on the back porch. I almost set my toaster oven on fire and discovered that you're right. You can't melt plastic without a lot of it burning. But I had a bucket full of plastic that was just sitting there waiting for me to put it in the toaster oven and see what else I could do with it. And I thought it's just fill. It's like the same thing with the fender. So let me come up with some products that could where you could use that material as fill for that product. And one of the first things that we developed was a medicine ball, and basically off the same design that exists out in the world. Every medicine ball is pretty much the same. It's a cover. It is new plastic filler material inside with a rubber core inside, a new rubber material inside of that, like tire rubber. But it's not tire rubber. It's real. It's new. It's something that's been manufactured just for that specific purpose. So I completely dismantled this there, took it apart, and then I rebuilt it using plastic. And it's 14-inch diameter ball. I thought, I wonder how much plastic I can get in this thing. I wonder how heavy I can get this ball to be. And as it turns out, that size ball, a 14-inch medicine ball, I can get a little over 20 pounds of plastic in that.
Wow.
Which is a lot, which is 2 5-gallon buckets, 2 5-gallon paint buckets full of shredded plastic into a medicine ball. I have some out back. I wish I had one here with me. I'd show it to you. Actually, I have one on my phone. I'm taking 10 to 12 of them to Body Glove Dive and Surf this weekend. We're doing our very first release. I built 25, 30 of them, and I've given them to actors and to stunt guys and different people to, give me their feedback on it and tell me what they think. We made some changes to the design. It's more like a kettlebell medicine ball combination. It could be one, it could be both. It can be whatever you want it to be. I then filed for a patent on that. That patent is pending. I also filed for a patent on a new heavy bag, a 45-pound heavy bag, and we were granted that patent. I haven't gotten the certificate yet, but my patent attorney tells me any time now it will show up. But I know I've gotten it because I've been informed by them, but I haven't gotten my official certificate, which I want to frame and hang on my wall. But the point is that what we've started, it's a foundation. So it's a nonprofit. Every dime that comes in goes to the development of products. We've developed tile, developed snowboard racks for your car, easy strap-on snowboard racks, which is also a surfboard rack. It can double up. You could tie a refrigerator to your roof of your car with this thing if you wanted to. Because everything that I built, or everything that we've redesigned, originated from a design that exists on the market today that's used every day by millions of people. The medicine balls are, one item in particular. There isn't a store around that has any free weights because of the COVID.
Right.
So had I even anticipated, I didn't anticipate it, I would have built thousands of them, because each medicine ball contains the equivalent plastic of 640 water bottles, standard size water bottles. So if you take a water bottle, a standard size water bottle, that not a big one, not a tiny little thing, but a standard one, empty it out and put it on a scale and weigh it. It weighs a half an ounce. So there's 32 bottles to a pound. So if you were to shred 32 or 640 bottles, that would fit in 2 5-gallon buckets. That's what goes in our medicine ball.
Dude, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's all it is. That's what it is. We're more product development than we are actually recycling. We want to encourage people to look at these things in a different way. Look at this material as a resource, not as it's not garbage. This stuff is going to last forever. It will outlast all of us. So why not do something with that material that is useful to us? Give it value, and then it'll be a commodity. There are companies that we've been working with. So we look for other companies that are trying to head down the same road. We're contacted by other companies. I just had a long talk with a guy in Greece about redoing their system because they don't know what to do with the plastic that they're collecting. And they heard that we were developing products. So we're really a product development organization that encourages manufacturers. We're willing to work with any manufacturer. We're willing to give them our designs, our ideas, to engage with them, to enhance their current line with a product that we've developed. We've got 21 different products on the line right now. One of them is tile, which is a great, beautiful tile. It looks like terrazzo tile. and it's an indoor tile right now. We're working on the outdoor. But that's something that we can work with the tile manufacturer on so that they can incorporate that into their line. And now they have an eco-friendly line that uses, each tile uses a pound of plastic. So the equivalent of 32 bottles worth of plastic in the mix for that tile. So that's really what we are. Huh?
That's a great concept. What is the organization called? Where can people find the product?
It's Earth Oceans Foundation. We have earthoceans.foundation, which is our website, which needs to be updated. We have Facebook page, Earth Oceans. We also have an Instagram, Earth Oceans. They can contact me directly through any one of those vehicles, any one of those sites. And if they are interested in engaging with us, they're manufacturers, they're designers, they want us to help them develop a product. We have engineers that work with us. Everybody that works with us, my brother's an engineer, I think I mentioned that. He's one of our designers. He tests all of the products that if I come up with a crazy idea, I'll call him and we'll then build a prototype. And a lot of times I'll send it off to him and he'll do all the testing that needs to be done on it for whatever specific industry it's in, like concrete products. And nobody gets paid. The only people that make any money doing this are the people who, we have a shredder, we have styrofoam shredders. We've just engaged with one of the studios to deal with their styrofoam issues. So we're working with a couple of different companies on developing pet products using recycled styrofoam and recycled plastic. We're working with another company that's manufacturing kind of like a lightweight concrete foam block. You could use it for insulation. There's all kinds of uses for it. So we have those. We actually have the shredder. We get material in, sometimes way too much material. I can't get ahead of it. And this whole COVID thing has been great because I've been able to spend a lot of time dealing with just that. So anybody out there that wants to engage in a meaningful way, they've got a great idea for a product, I'm happy to give them everything I've learned over the last 5 years in the development of this entire process and this entire concept through all the legal requirements you have to go through, the patenting, protecting your idea, all of that. If they want to do that, they can get a hold of me through Instagram, Facebook, or through the website. I'm just going to show you a picture so that people can see what the medicine ball looks like, because I want them to understand that these started out as a design that already exists, or something that already exists that we then took and improved upon. Can you see that okay?
Yeah. Send me those pictures too. So I'm going to put them in the video here too. Very
okay,
cool.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll send you different pictures of a few of our products, the sandbags, the medicine ball, the heavy bag, things like that. Our heavy bag contains the equivalent of 1,440 bottles, one heavy bag.
That's
yeah, and we've totally changed the design. So it has handles, so it has 3 containment vessels inside of the big bag. And everything, all that material is contained within hypoallergenic bags as well.
Okay.
And sealed. That if you tore the cover of the thing, it still wouldn't get out in the world.
Very
but
cool.
Even if it did, at least we've gotten a lot out,
Yeah, that's fantastic, Charlie. Very cool. I'm going to put links into the description of this video as well for people to go and look at it.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be great.
Hey, so one more thing. If you could go back in time, what would you tell a 20-year-old Charlie nowadays with all the knowledge you've gathered?
Wow. What would I tell a 20-year-old Charlie? Pay attention. Pay attention. Understand what you're doing. Understand what you're involved in. And want it. You really got to want it. I this is a horrible thing to say, but my girlfriend at the time, when I started pursuing stunts, she got a little upset, and she was like, where do I line up in this, stunts, your car and me, those seem to be the three most important things in your life. I said, well, I have to be totally honest with you. Stunts comes first. That's the most important thing in my life. You have to want it. You have to, that has to be everything in your life. I think you have to take it seriously. Yeah. It's not a joke, and it's a career, and it will be a career if you are serious about it. The way you went after, you wanted it since you were 7 years old. You can remember that. You remember how you felt about that. And you asked Callie a question, and you said, what do you think, what is it about stunt people? What was it? It was, what is it about stunt people that's different than other people, I think? Something like that, right? I think that was the gist of the question.
Right.
And stunt people, I think that we all have the same thing. I don't know exactly how to explain what that thing is, but if you have it, you know you have it, because that is all that is important to you in your life until you start to have kids and the whole 9 yards. They become far more important, or they become equally as important. But there's this desire to be totally engulfed in that world in whatever way it is. If you succeed, you go to the highest levels within that field, or if you just exist in that field, can be exactly the same, can be just as fulfilling to you if you want it, if you want it so bad, but you take it seriously, but you don't take yourself too damn seriously. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important element, is that a lot of successful stunt people that I know, they take their job dead seriously. This is how I'm doing it. I don't want to get killed. I don't want to get hurt, blah, blah, blah. But they have great personalities as well. They don't take themselves seriously. They're not uptight. They're not assholes. They're not arrogant. They just come in, they have a job to do, and they know they know what they're going to, you work together with everybody. Yeah. I think that's important. Somebody asked me one time, are there any star stuntmen? And I said, there are a few that think they are. But no, I don't really think there are, unless you get into the guys like the Terry Leonards and Jeannie Eppers and Yakima Knuts and those guys, and the Charlie Chaplins and all the guys that came way before us. They were star stuntmen. The guys nowadays, they don't have a clue. They're not smart. You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't become a Madonna. Work within the system, and everybody will love you, and you'll love everybody. And I know it's kind of a a fanciful way of looking at it, but I think that's you don't have to be an asshole. Maybe that's probably what I would tell them. Don't be an asshole. Just, be
perfect last word, Charlie. Hey, I really had a lot of fun talking to you. It was really
good 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. And I could do more. So maybe we'll do another one.
I would be happy to. I appreciate you. You asking me if I would do this.
Oh, of course.
When I heard that, you asked Callie to do, I was like, what's wrong with me? Why didn't he ask me? I want to do that too, No, it's great. I think it's great that you're doing this, and I think it's great that you talk to everybody and get everybody on this thing, and it really gives others an insight into what this business is about, what our end of the business is about.
Yeah.
That we didn't necessarily get. We got from books and maybe the occasional story that you would see on some show or something,
Yeah. When you were saying that you were gathering and collecting all those books, forever, I I can relate because I was the same way. I'd like any little piece I could find in a magazine that's about stunt people, or recording anything I could come across. Actually did see Jake Lombard, I think it was on Stunt Masters, jumping off the waterfalls in Venezuela. Knew about BJ Worth, doubling Bond, jumping off the Eiffel Tower, and all this stuff, Remy Julien, and all, it's just, I don't know, it's just always a burning passion inside that, God's gifted me with, because too many people don't know what they want to do in life. And I can't understand that. I mean, I said it the other day, I think to Callie or somebody else, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but it's so hard for me to understand when someone tells me, I don't know what I want to do. And all I can think of is just, dude, you're burning time, like you have one lifetime. And I spoke to an actor friend of mine the other day, Brian Wade. He was saying it perfectly. He says, too many people hate what they do, hate their job, looking forward to Fridays, hating Mondays. And all of a sudden you're old and you look back and said, man, I wish I would have. Right. And then what?
Yeah.
So, again, this show here is really not for stunt people, about stunt people. It just so happens that the majority of my friends are stunt performers, or in the industry somehow. And I just want to help anyone to get out of their cubicle and, start your muffin business or whatever it is you want to do that you really enjoy doing. And I don't know, Charlie, what's your take on that? What kind of advice would you give someone that anywhere in the world is kind of stuck in that rut?
It's funny because with 3 kids, I've had to say the same thing to them. I've said, I don't care what you do, as long as you love what you do. It doesn't matter what it is. It's as long as you're happy, because like you said, you've got one shot at it. And it's over before you know it. And why live your life absolutely miserable and hating having to go back to work on Monday? I love to go back to work. And that's one of the things I love about some people is we're dying to go back to work. We miss a day's worth of work and we're all like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I didn't work today. I want to go back to work because you make good money doing it. And it's a great life, but it's that it's like Callie was trying to explain to you. She loves being on set. She's always loved being on set. When she was 4 years old, there was on Planet of the Apes. I don't know if she told you the story or not. Did she tell you how she got that?
She said she had to be in a cage and cry.
Right. So there were 2 kids that were cast, twins that were cast to play the part that Callie ended up playing. We had ape school at my house in the backyard. So all of the actors, Wahlberg, everybody else, they were all here. The guys who were playing the apes, we had a full makeup rehearsal days. Rick Baker and all of his people came out, all the costume people, everybody. They were all at the house here.
Wow.
And it was great. It was like, but the circus has come to my house. This is amazing. And all these stunt guys that were playing gorillas and Michael Clark Duncan and everybody, and they were all in full makeup. And Callie was 4 years old at the time. And she was standing inside the house, looking out through the glass doors, watching these guys. And slowly but surely, Michael Clark Duncan got, connected with Callie. And when she saw him, even in full makeup, she wasn't afraid of him. And then she became not afraid of all of the other guys. And then all the stunt guys climbed all over her swing set and destroyed it. And she was furious with them. And she insisted that they all buy her a new swing set. This is at 4 years old. So we had a day that these 2 kids that had been cast to play the role that Callie ended up playing, were going to come in and meet the guys in full makeup. And I thought, that's not going to go well, because these kids, they're 4 years old. And if you've been around kids, that age, and they're afraid of clowns, they're afraid of anything, they're afraid of all kinds of things. So I thought, you know, I'm going to bring Callie to work with me that day just in case these kids completely fall apart, because we're shooting that today also. We're supposed to shoot that scene. So we went down there. They brought one kid in. The kid saw one of the guys in makeup, flipped out, ran off the stage. His mom chased him out of the stage, calmed him down, got the other one, the twin, brought him in, showed him the ape. He freaked out, panicked, ran off crying. Mom came back in and said, "This isn't happening today. There's no way they're going to get comfortable with these apes, and we have to lock them in a cage. It's not going to happen." So I was standing there with Callie, and Tim Burton and Richard Zanuck were standing up on set, and they're both like, "What the hell do we do?" And I was standing at the bottom of the stairs with Callie. I kind of planned this. And they looked at Callie and they went, "What about Callie?" I said, "She's comfortable with these guys. As you can see, you know, she's friends with Michael and everybody else. Let's put her in the cage." So we put her in the cage, and then Tim goes, "Do you think she could cry?" I said, "I don't know, Callie, can you cry?" Next thing you know, she's got tears going down her face. I was like, "Oh man, this is perfect. This is great." So she played the part at 4 years old of the little girl, the little human girl that was kidnapped by the apes and kept as a pet. And we had her 5th birthday on set.
Wow, what a cool story. Yeah, and Michael, he's such a huge dude, and his voice is so deep and pretty intimidating.
You know, I think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, he was just the sweetest guy. And as soon as she would see him, he'd be in full makeup, she'd run up to him and he'd pick her up. And I mean, she was as big as his head. You know, his head was the same size as Callie. And he'd pick her up and she just loved him to death. And it was hard for her. She had to play a scene in a cell, in a jail cell. She's locked up and she's taken out of this cell by Michael Clark Duncan. And repeatedly I had to say, "Don't smile." Whatever you do, don't smile. You got to play like you're scared of this guy. She's like, "Okay, I don't know how to do that. I'm only 5, you know." But it was great. So
cool.
And she's had the passion ever since then.
Yeah, yeah, she told me.
The boys, you know.
She's such a good kid. I like from day one that I met her. You just like, and again, I mentioned that when I talked to her, like she shows up on set, you know, not even on payroll. She just wants to learn. She just wants to be there, and she definitely paid her dues. And yeah, pretty stoked about her. She's awesome.
She wants it, you know. And I told her that when she came out of college. I said, you know, she said, "Okay, what are we doing?" I said, "I don't know. You tell me what we're doing. You have to really want it. You have to figure out how you're going to go through this. Because, I mean, it's easy to give it to you, but I'm not going to give it to you unless you really want it. So you have to take the steps. You have to earn it. You have to do the work. You have to show up when, you know, there's some people that won't show up if they're not getting paid. You have to show up. No matter what, it doesn't matter whether you're getting paid or not. That's not what's important. The money is not important. Getting there and doing the job and learning all about it, that's what's important. And she's followed through with that. You know, I think that's an important element to this. Well, when I first started, I would have paid people to, you know, if they let me do stunts.
Right.
And say, "How much is it going to cost me for you to let me jump off that building?" You know, that was the attitude that I had. You know.
Yeah.
I didn't do it that way, but that's, you know, that's the passion that you have. And she needed to understand that. And, you know, the whole thing about kids who are in the business because their parents are in the business or their, you know, the friends are in the business and stuff. I think it's important that they have a harder time. They should have a harder time getting it. Mm-hmm. Because in the end, it's actually easier for them because they have all the connections. They just have to show the passion. They have to show the commitment to it. You didn't have anybody in the business when you started, did you?
No, not.
So you went to do it on your own.
Dude, huh? I grew up in a country that didn't even have a film industry at the time.
There you go.
Everyone thought I was out of my mind, you know?
Think about how committed to it you had to have been. To get where you've gotten today, I mean, you had to be 100%, 150% committed to doing it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have accomplished it. You know, I didn't have anybody in the business. I grew up around a lot of that, but I didn't have a contact in the business when I went after it. So you have to want it. I think if you want something bad enough, you know, you'll eventually achieve it.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've seen any other videos, but I got contacted by a stunt guy from Iran through Instagram, and his name is Arsha Agdazi, and he is, dude, that guy has so much heart. It's unbelievable. Like growing up in that country and just being the underdog. I mean, he was explaining to me how stunt people were always, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, just treated like crap on set. They were looked down upon. They were like the least important people. And, you know, it's just a little different, obviously. But just a burning heart of desire. And, you know, like he's done something like 38 pipe ramps or whatever. It's just like, oh, I love flipping cars, you know, and he designs his old roll cages, and just very, very inspiring. I mean, really cool. Really cool dude.
I saw his stuff. I saw the video that you did with him. I've heard of him before too.
Have you?
There were a couple of people out of Iran that there's a girl also.
Okay.
That came and visited me on one of the shows, some set someplace, and they're super passionate about it.
Yeah.
He's the same way. You know, it's great when you see that. That really kind of restores my faith in the new guys coming up. Not that I don't have any faith in them, but you know, it makes you go, there you go. Now there's somebody, and you could tell. I mean, the minute you meet them, you go, that guy or that girl is going to succeed. You look at them 10 years from now, and they'll be just rocking and rolling because of their passion, because of their attitude for it. You know?
Absolutely.
That's really important.
You know, and to go back to your daughter and actually your guys' relationship, when I first saw that on The Rookie, when I met you guys, you know, having a daughter myself, she just turned 14, and she's gotten to do a few things on her own, little stunt parts and so on. And she's obviously always been a Bobbies, you know, has done little bitty high falls when she was 3 years old, and been around stunt people like, you know, like Callie has, right, growing up.
Right.
Ridden air rams and started racing go-karts at 4, and now she's driving her Miata and so on. And just a few weeks ago, we came back from the track, and she was saying, you know, I don't think I want to pursue a racing career, Dad. I want to do what you guys do, you know. And so it's just fun to see someone finding what they want to do, and then obviously get opportunities. It's all about an opportunity as well. You know, nobody's doing it on their own. Everyone needs a hand to get up. But yeah, so to wrap this up, because I do want to do another one with you, is, you know, like, do find or try to find your passion. Don't be afraid. Dream big, and yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to someone that you don't know. Don't intimidate yourself from moving on.
Yeah. Are you looking for me to respond to that?
No, I don't. I was just looking at you.
I agree with you completely. No, I agree with you completely. You know, you're absolutely right. There are people who are approachable in this business, in our end of the business, that others know that are approachable, that you can go to. And I have people call me a lot. I don't mind people coming to me. I don't mind people hustling me. You know, they understand that I don't necessarily always have the time to stop and talk to them, but if they're there, I see them when they first walk up. Some people stand out like sore thumb, and I'll do everything I can to get over to them as, you know, for as long as possible. And that's important. There are guys that don't want anything to do with people coming and hustling them. And that's fine, because we'll find all the new talent and help them get going. And I think it's important to encourage and to support and to, if possible, mentor people along the way and give them that shot. I got a shot. You got a shot. Everybody that's out here now doing it and it's succeeded got a shot, and probably got more than one shot at it. So there's I think paying it forward is important.
Absolutely.
You know?
All right, Charlie. Well, hey, we'll do it again for sure because I have so much more I want to talk to you about. But I do have to go to bed. It's 10:15 here.
Okay. I'm sorry for keeping you up so long.
No, don't at all. I had a great time. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Charlie.
Great. Well, thank you, Oliver. I appreciate it. And I appreciate that you're doing this. I think this is a good thing.
Cool.
There are other guys that have done this kind of stuff, but it's not the same as this. I think this is the right format. So,
I think
I'll take this a long way.
I appreciate that a lot. Because I was, obviously, I am aware of Corey Eubanks, and then what's the guy's name? Stephen Hart. He's got something I heard. And when I mentioned this idea to a couple of friends of mine, they reminded me on those two. And at first I was, again, intimidated for a moment. I was like, oh, maybe it's not a good idea, but this is about something totally different anyway. So this is just about helping people, and, everyone has something they struggle with. And if we can help one person, then we're succeeding. And last week I got a beautiful letter from a lady that this made a little difference in her life already, so I'm excited. I want to keep going.
That's perfect. That's great. Yeah. You got to pay it forward. I think You're right. And with Corey's show, you're right. Corey's is cool, Stunt Stories and Steve Hart's, but at the same time, they approach it their way.
Yeah, that's great.
There's room for more than one format,
Yeah.
And to get the real stories out there. You didn't have this when we started, so
no.
We were destined to the library, looking up, stunt, anything that had anything to do with stunts,
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
I want to have Corey and Stephen on here because they both have, had their journey. And
Corey, I was on a plane one time. I was young, and I was looking through the magazine, the Eubanks family, and how Corey was trying to get into stunts, and he was Bob's son, and so on, and what he was doing to get going on Dukes.
Yeah.
And how he progressed. And Corey and I are really good friends now, and have been for many, many, many years. But what was interesting was I found it fascinating, that story about him, about his family, long before I knew him, before I had the opportunity to meet him. And then it was just working with him, and I got to know him, and we became good friends. And he's a great guy.
An
incredible, an amazing talent. I mean, he's just astounding in a car.
Yeah. And he's got a huge heart. He's a good person,
Yep. He does. You're absolutely right. And but he has a different way of approaching the stories. He will interview the old timers, and that's important too. The old guys,
Yeah.
I don't know when you'll ever be able to get an old guy on here because.
So I talked to Spanky Spangler Jr. a few days ago. He hit me up, and he's following his dad's footsteps. But he also has a very successful trucking business on the side. But he just loves doing those crazy stunts, right? And he's doing it a little safer than his dad did back in the day, because although his dad was actually really good at what he did, pulled off some crazy stuff, the technology was just not as advanced as nowadays,
Right.
So that being said, I just got a text today from Brian Spanky Jr. saying that his dad watched the recording that Brian did, and he totally would be up to come on here and have a conversation. So that's going to be exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You should try to reach out to anybody, the genies, and Terry Leonard's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Just an amazing. Were you on on Call of the Wild in the bar sequence? Did I have you there when Terry was there?
No, I wasn't on the movie when we were out at the Sable Ranch, I believe.
Sable. Yeah.
Right.
You came out there.
Yeah.
I wonder what scene. What scene? Do you recall?
Yeah.
Was it climbing the mountain?
No, I was supposed to, but then I was on the Rookie. I was in the scene where on a loading dock, I was carrying women across the mud.
Oh yeah. Well, it's kind of the same area. We were in the bar. We had Terry. So Harrison Ford and Terry have done like 7 or 9 shows together.
Yeah, right.
And had never gotten a photo together.
I heard that.
So I went to the photographer. I said, any way you can get me a photo of the 2 of them together would be awesome. Because then she did it, and we blew the photos up. We framed both of them. I took one to Terry. He signed it to Harrison. I took one to Harrison, and he signed it to Terry. And they and it's a picture of the both of them together hanging out at the bar.
Wow.
You know, and it's amazing stories come out. And then they hung out there at the bar. All the stunt guys we had would all just sit around in a circle and listen to these stories that these old guys, you know, old timers had. They're not that old, but
yeah,
they were before us. So great stories.
I can't imagine. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm doing the best I can to reach out. And you know, it's really cool that even like tomorrow I'm talking to John Eves. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know the name.
Okay. So there was a movie made in the 80s called Fire and Ice, and it was produced and directed by Willy Bogner. Well, Willy Bogner was a German camera operator that did a lot of action sequences. Well, he was the first guy that was able to ski backwards with a camera, and he was filming James Bond and so on in the Bond movies. And then he started a clothing company for winter gear called Bogner. And I think it was to promote his ski gear. He made this ski movie. And John Eves, which was a ski acrobat and pro skier, he plays the main part. And it's just a bunch of beautiful skiing sequences with great music. And I grew up, you know, watching that in the 80s. And I just loved the movie. It's great explosions, huge jumps, and, you know, mogul skiing, really great, fun movie. And about a week ago, I was thinking of him, and I wrote him on Facebook, and within a day he responded. He checked out the website already, and he says, yeah, I'm totally up for it. So we've been playing phone tag, and so now tomorrow at noon I'm interviewing him.
That's awesome. You know how I know his name? All the guys that I started out with, Scott Sproul and Lane Parrish and Tony Jefferson, Max Clevin, these guys, they were all skiers up in Sun Valley. They were racers out in Sun Valley. So they used to do all the old Warren Miller films. The Hot Dog, the movie they did. Max directed all the second unit on that. So I think that's why that name is familiar.
Okay.
Had to come from them.
Maybe.
I skied also. I was on a ski team and stuff, but on my high school ski team, but I didn't I didn't, you know, go on like that. I didn't continue racing like that did though. I wasn't a ski bum.
Right. All right, we'll talk again, Charlie. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Oliver. I appreciate you asking me.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
All right, you too.
All right. Bye, pal.